My name is Don Parkinson, and I am a consultation specialist with S&C Lavalin, who, along with Dillon Consulting Limited, are the technical team for the Northern Road Link Environmental Assessment. The proponents of the NRL Environmental Assessment are Martin Falls First Nation and Webequie First Nation. Tonight, we will be updating you on where we currently are in the project and responding to any questions or comments you have relating to the project. The evening will begin with a presentation followed by a Q&A session. And maybe before we go any further, I'll give you the call-in number or the text number. It's 1-844-424-0500. That's 1-844-424-0500. And before I launch into the presentation, I want to introduce the project co-leads. We have Mr. Qasim Sadiq, who is with us tonight, I believe. Qasim, you're there, are you?
Hi, Don. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good, thanks. And the other project co-lead is Mr. Michael Fox, who I believe is on the line with us as well.
Yes,
Michael,
I am.
You
Can you hear me, Don?
Yes, I can.
I'm here.
Loud and clear.
Excellent.
I can hear your dulcet tones there, Mike. So let's launch into the presentation now. And so what this will be doing is sort of updating you on the project to date. And so we're going to be running through the Chief's messages. We're going to play both videos of each of the Chief's messages about the project. We're going to give a bit of a project background, a description of the project, and then talk about the team itself. We're going to show a map of the project with other all-season, in the context of other all-season road projects. We're going to look at the preliminary study area and alternatives. We're going to talk about where we are in the process, in the provincial tour process. We're going to talk about the draft tour review period and the themes of the comments received. And then we'll dive in a little bit later, further into that a little bit later in a session sort of towards the end. And we're going to talk about the upcoming proposed tour review period, where we're going to talk about the importance of participating in that review period and what happens when comments are received. And then finally, we'll talk about capacity funding opportunities that are available and what comes next. So what I thought we would do next is play the two Chiefs' messages. The first will be Chief Bruce of Martin Falls First Nation, and then we'll follow up with Chief Cornelius Wabas of Webequie First Nation. So let's watch those videos, and then we'll come back and continue the presentation.
We're looking at, our own rights as a First Nation. Our right to economic self-sufficiency, as our forefathers had done for millennia. And it seems that we can't move forward with that in any sort of way previous to that. So this sort of offers us an opportunity to put all our thoughts and all our actions, all our sense of working together with our team and our community to build something that we should be proud of in the future and that we're going to use every day, and that's infrastructure. So we find that an opportunity to build a road into the Ring of Fire means an opportunity for our First Nation to to have a meaningful engagement with the governments, government of Ontario and Canada, and also engagement with the business sector, the mining sector. So we find it something that we can move forward with our neighboring First Nation, Webque First Nation. We have an opportunity to lead an environmental assessment, and as such, it's a huge opportunity for our First Nation. And our people have been training for the past 5-6 years now with Matua and their with their training programs with Matua training. I forget the name, but they provide a lot of training, and our youth have received a lot of training, and a lot of them have achieved grade 12, and they're looking for something to move on to, and we have to create those opportunities for our youth now that a lot of them have gotten that basic education and basic training education in mining field, had a way to achieve success, so that our people can be successful too.
Yeah, the way of life, the better way of life I'm talking about is, having, better housing, better roads in our community, better, communication systems in our community, and, better services in our community, including health and education, and all those that will make our community better as it is now. We lack infrastructure for our education buildings, education school buildings. We're overcrowded, and same with our health infrastructure. We're overcrowded. Our nurses that come to our community, they're overcrowded. There's only a certain amount of nurses that can come to our community at any time. And then we have, limited access to, doctor, and other services like dental and vision. The EA processes that we're doing is to determine, the feasibility and also the impacts to make sure that we don't overlook any impacts that may be created from developing a road in our area. And the environmental assessment has to be done in a proper way, in a manner that's satisfactory to the First Nations, even the surrounding First Nations, and we have to work closely together. So it is a good opportunity, to work together. The purpose of trying to develop the North is for our communities to prosper, as we develop, and make sure that we have, the real benefits for our community.
With our team. Let's move on now back to the presentation. And technical team, if you can move to slide number 4, the project background slide. Okay, there we are. So just to give a bit of a background on the project, Martin Falls and Webequie are both remote Indigenous communities, and what this means is they're not currently accessible by an all-season road. And both of these communities are committed to sustainable development within their traditional territories. In 2018, Martin Falls started collecting information, past studies associated with all-season roads, connecting their community with the Ring of Fire. And then this material was then shared in a few community level events um, to get some feedback from community members. And as a result, a few alternatives were developed, and some historic alternatives were also included or amended, actually, to take into account community values as well. And then this background work sort of formed the foundation, or sort of the springboard, for the actual Northern Road Link project. And then in March of 2020, the province of Ontario and both First Nations announced an agreement to work together on this project, starting with the environmental assessment. If we can move to slide number 5, please. So, what does the NRL project include? An all-season road is not just a road, but this particular road is, as I said, all season. It'll be a gravel road that's planned to be a gravel road with a length that would range from between 117 and 164 kilometers, depending on the particular corridor that's chosen. It would be a 60-meter cleared area, and there would be a 100-meter right of way. Um, the the width of the actual road surface would be 11.5 meters. I think the presentation shows 20 meters, but it's actually 11.5 meters. Um, and they would be undivided lanes. There would be shoulders and ditches where required or where necessary. Of course, in running over terrain such as it will be, there will be many water crossings, including one large bridge crossing over the Attawapiskat River. There will be a number of smaller bridges, then of course a number of culverts for the smaller crossings. There will be, as there are with any road project, what we call ancillary structures, and what that means is additional sort of um, additional facilities that are associated with to support the road. And during construction, these are temporary, and these would be borrow areas, sources of aggregate or road building material, and quarry sites, again, to generate road building material as well. There would be temporary access roads and temporary water crossings to access some of these ancillary infrastructure elements, such as aggregate pits as well. There would be temporary work areas or camps, construction camps. There would be equipment and material laydown areas as well. So it's not just a road, there are other facilities associated with it. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Slide number 6, project team. So to give everyone a bit of a background on the project team and how the project is actually organized, there are the 2 First Nations, and they are represented through a working group which includes members of both First Nations. Uh, and so, and then beneath them, there are the project co-leads, who are the management team, basically the day-to-day operational management team, and they oversee the technical team, which are S&C Lavalin and Dillon Consulting Limited. So the project co-leads, I've introduced them earlier, are Michael Fox and Qasim Sadiq. And then the working group consists of Lawrence Baxter, Alana Downey Baxter, Roy Spence, and Gordon Wabas. Next slide, please. So where does this project sit in the context of the other road projects? I'm sure many of our viewers are aware of 2 other projects that are undergoing environmental assessment that were initiated earlier. One of them is the Webequie Supply Road. The other one is the Martin Falls Community Access Road. The Northern Road Link project sits between the 2, connects the eastern end of the Webequie Supply Road to the northern end of the Martin Falls Community Access Roads. And again, all 3 of these projects are undergoing separate environmental assessments and will be engineered as all-season multi-use roads. Next slide, please. So we have a preliminary study area, which is basically what you call a buffered area around the route alternatives. So a buffer means sort of a uniform distance around sort of a linear feature. And so this represents what you see on the screen is the preliminary study area for the project. Next slide, please. Now, I touched on a little bit earlier, I mentioned the term alternatives. We have 12 alternative corridor segments, and you can see them on this map here. And a combination of these segments in the end will form the route that is put forward. So right now, or during the environmental assessment process, we'll actually be doing evaluations of the different alternatives, and there will be different criteria developed. Well, there have been criteria developed, but there will be additional criteria probably added to help evaluate the different alternatives. Next slide, please. So where are we in the provincial tour process? So we, at the end of January, I believe it was January 28th, we closed the draft tour review period. And I believe that had been open for 7 weeks, around 7 weeks, I think. And during that period, we received comments on the draft terms of reference document, which is the work plan for the environmental assessment. So that period is closed now, and so our technical team, has been busy drafting responses, which we have to do to each comment or question, and making amendments in some cases to the draft terms of reference. So our team's been busy doing that, and then once they are complete in doing that, they will submit what is called a proposed terms of reference for review, and then that will go forward to a minister's decision. So the expectation at this point is to have a proposed tour in by late winter, early spring. And so our team is busy working on that, as I mentioned, and we look forward to getting that in. And then there will be another review period for the proposed tour. So we think it's important to be transparent with our viewers in terms of sharing the kinds of comments that we received on the draft terms of reference. We received comments from the mining industry and from Indigenous communities. So what I thought I would do is run through some of the main areas where we received comments. Um, so let's start with the mining industry. So with the mining industry, we received comments on the regional assessment. Comments were about the relationship, asking about the relationship between the NRL environmental assessment and the regional assessment for the Ring of Fire. There were comments from the mining industry on future mine development activities. And a lot of these comments related to ensuring that the road corridor that is being that has been identified doesn't spatially sort of overlap planned facilities associated with any future mining development or any high priority exploration areas as well. We also received some comments that we ensure that the location of the road services the mineral exploration and future resource development activities as well, and a comment that the termination, the northern end of the northern road link, uh, actually be at the location of the Mukatai airstrip. So, continuing on with the mining industry comments, we received a number of comments on road construction, the timing and phasing of road construction. Uh, there was a comment about expedited project schedule to facilitate road and resource development in advance that will allow opportunities for youth to be able to get involved in the project earlier. In other words, speed things up so that this development can occur faster and more people in the region can benefit from this. There was also a request for a detailed construction plan, more definitive construction plan to effectively build confidence in the industry um, that this road is actually going to go ahead. Uh, there was a comment that alternative road development methods need to consider expediting the schedule and making use of existing infrastructure such as winter roads and other temporary infrastructure um, to help spur exploration in the area earlier. If we can move to the next slide, please. We also received some comments on cumulative effects assessment. And this comment was about the mining industry um, making sure that in the cumulative effects assessment for the EA, it includes what the mining industry considers as reasonably foreseeable projects. We also received comments relating to the getting some better idea of the workforce requirements for road construction as well, trying to get like a sort of a better handle. They were asking for a better, sort of a more a rough idea of how many people might be required in terms of road construction and operation. And then, of course, there were comments on road construction techniques, building in wetlands and sensitive areas, and we can get into that a little bit later on in our discussion. Um, let's move now to the Indigenous community comments. There were a number of Indigenous community comments, and sort of one common comment that we got was greater involvement in the project by communities other than Martin Falls and Webequie, getting a greater level of sort of participation in different project milestones. Another interesting comment was a request for more nation-to-nation format project discussions between Martin Falls, Webequie, and some of the neighboring First Nations as well. And then there were comments on alternatives or alternative methods. So communities other than Martin Falls and Webequie providing input into the criteria developed to assess advantages and disadvantages of the different alternative methods as well. Next slide, please. So we also got, and this sort of follows the theme of more of communities requesting more participation in the process, communities beyond Martin Falls and Webequie. And so this one related to specific participation on the discussion of alternatives, on discussion of water crossings, alignment of the road, location of aggregate sources, you know, and even more detailed than that, water body crossing structure types, span lengths, road alignment, aggregate extraction areas. There was a lot of interest in by these other communities in getting involved in those more specific aspects of the project. And then another sort of running theme of the comments was a disaggregated approach, what they called a disaggregated approach to reporting the results of input from Indigenous, from other First Nations. And by disaggregated, what they mean is reporting the comments by community, as opposed to lumping them all together. There were comments on Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests. The comments really were a wide number of comments on this. The tour and subsequent consultation and engagement plan should be written to adhere to the most stringent requirements associated with Ontario or IAC's environmental or impact assessment process. Next slide, please. We also received some comments that Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous land and resource use are components of rights and interests of First Nations, but they don't actually represent all of the rights which are present in the project area. These rights extend beyond harvesting rights and omit cultural rights and other rights of importance. We got some comments on the preliminary valued components. One of them was that preliminary valued components associated with Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests should include indicators such as availability and fragmentation of land for rights-based activities and other interests. And then there was another interesting comment on another indicator, which would be the perception of availability of land for rights-based activities. Next slide, please. So continuing on with the Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests, we received some comments that preliminary valued components associated with cultural continuity and well-being. There was a suggestion that an indicator or a measurement method be actual cultural landscapes and safe access to travel routes for the necessary practicing of rights. And this is another interesting one. A proposed new valued component was governance, with the indicator being changes to Indigenous authority and jurisdiction through the imposition of colonial regulatory processes. So a lot of comments under Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests. Now, we also received a number of comments on COVID accommodation, asking for a flexibility of approaches and timelines in relation to current pandemic due to the impacts of the pandemic response. We received a lot of comments on this, and we can get into a little bit later on talking about some of the alternative methods that we developed to continue communication with communities during the pandemic. We received comments on valued components, weaving Indigenous knowledge into the assessment, asking that, basically Indigenous knowledge be part of every component of the environmental assessment, which is required by the regulators. A pathway analysis be provided, tying the components back to conceptualize Indigenous rights valued components. Input by First Nations other than the proponents, Martin Falls and Webequie, into the baseline conditions, input into mitigation measures, residual effects, follow-up strategies for each valued component related to their rights and interests upon development of the environmental assessment or impact assessment. Next slide, please. We also got some comments on odor as well too, stating that odor must be considered and assessed as part of the air quality assessment for construction phases, because diesel-powered construction vehicles have the potential to alter the localized environment by introducing odor to an otherwise sort of neutral environment, and which might increase avoidance behaviors and negative perceptions of people actually using the land, harvesters and land users. And one area which is more and more is becoming an area of concern is climate change. And the general comment was that the climate change assessment must take into consideration Indigenous perspectives and Indigenous knowledge to make sure that sort of larger world view or holistic view, where everything is sort of connected to each other, is taken and applied to the process. And then, of course, commitments and monitoring, making sure commitments and monitoring related to potential impacts to Indigenous rights and interests are developed, with a conceptual monitoring plan, and is effectively sort of assessed, or is assessed as to its effectiveness as well. Next slide, please. We received comments on noise, and in that particular case, the First Nations, other than the proponents, wanted to be able to identify locations of noise receptors, specific locations for noise receptors. In terms of fish, wildlife, and vegetation, existing species lists other communities other than the proponents wanted to be able to include species or review the species list and include species that are found in their own communities as well. And then the health assessment had some interesting comments. The comment was, and I'll read it exactly as it says, the health assessment should model a self-sufficient indigenous receptor in relation to country food harvest to address potential future safety concerns of indigenous harvesters. And there was another comment on the health assessment topic, basically saying that organ tissue should be sampled as part of the food tissue sampling program, because of course community members often eat the organs of a lot of the animals that they harvest. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit, very briefly, about the upcoming proposed TOR review period and the importance of participating in this period of time. We are trying to make this terms of reference as comprehensive as possible, and to make sure that this project is evaluated properly and thoroughly. And we encourage Indigenous communities, the general public, tribal councils, and their advisors to review and provide their comments on the proposed TOR. This input, and we respond, as I mentioned earlier, we respond to each comment that is provided to us. It informs the development of the document, and it shapes the development of the document. And we will make amendments to the document as we receive comments where it is necessary. Next slide, please. So in terms of explaining what happens after comments are received, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but for each comment received, responses are prepared. Based on these comments, as I mentioned, changes to the terms of reference are often made where necessary. So we adjust that document, adjust that work plan for the environmental assessment. And the whole purpose of the process is to hear from those that could be potentially affected by the project and ensure that this work plan for the environmental assessment, this terms of reference, is comprehensive for the EA going forward. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about capacity funding opportunities. We recognize that Indigenous communities, due to their priorities and the scarcity of resources in many of these communities, are often in need of additional resources for activities like technical review activities, such as reviewing an environmental assessment terms of reference. Capacity funding is available to selected communities primarily through the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines and Natural Resources and Forestry, that's NDM NRF. And additional funding will also be made available to selected communities for the collection of Indigenous knowledge. And we'll talk about the importance of collecting Indigenous knowledge for projects for environmental assessments such as this a little bit later on. Okay, next slide, please. So what comes next? So the proposed TOR will be finalized in late winter or early spring 2022, then will be submitted to MECP. MECP will make the proposed TOR available for formal review and comment. And during and after that sort of prescribed review comment period, we'll respond to comments, incorporate feedback, and then submit the proposed TOR to MECP for the minister's decision. And then the proposed TOR will either be accepted with changes, or rejected. So that is the core presentation for tonight. But we have lots more to offer you tonight. We have a number of people who have joined us this evening, and I want to introduce them. And they are here to respond to any questions or comments you may have. Again, the number is 1-844-424-0500. That's 1-844-424-0500. So I've introduced the two project co-leads, Qasim Sadiq and Michael Fox, but why don't we introduce some of the other participants today, starting with, there we have everyone on the screen now, starting with, and if you can just raise your hand to indicate who you are. Let's starting with Brandon Fox, the consultation lead. There he is. Thank you, Brandon. Dan Kunstler, the engineering specialist. Dan, are you there? There he is. There's Dan. Andrea Nokelby, Indigenous Knowledge Lead. There she is. And John Plaisir, Project Ecologist. There's John. Tonight, Charmaine McGraw wasn't able to join us tonight, but she has left us a video message, just like they do on the awards shows. So we'll be playing that message a little bit later on. So we are going to, as we move through this program, we are going to mix in a couple of breaks, so you'll be able to take a bit of a break. We know 2 hours is a long time, so we are going to mix in some interesting videos. I think you'll find them very interesting, one from each community, and so we'll mix those in very shortly. But what I thought we would do next is do a little bit of a question and a little bit of a review of the frequently asked questions. And so I'm going to take advantage of having all these experts here with me, and I'll ask them some questions that we've compiled, frequently asked questions that we've compiled, and hopefully they will help our viewers understand the project a little bit better. So um, maybe this first question is for Dan, and it relates to the question is, to what standard will the road be built? Can you maybe expand on that a bit for us, please, Dan?
Sure, Don. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, just wanted to double check. Thanks. The standard road will be built to a collector or arterial standard and based on the TAC, Transportation Association of Canada standards, as well as the MTO provincial road standards. So we use both sets of guidelines and documents to design and build the road to provincial standards, if you will.
Thanks for that, Dan. This next one is one that we've seen a few times, and I always ask Qasim to answer this one. He gets the honor of answering this question, and so I'm going to ask him again. And the question is, why is the Northern Road Link project not part of one larger project that includes the Webequie Supply Road and Martin Falls Community Access Road projects? Is it not dividing one project into three?
Great, thank you for that question, Don. And let me start by saying that that the idea of a single project suggests that the project has one unifying purpose, and it's parallel across the different segments of the project. Now, that is not the case with the three projects that we're talking about in this region. The three projects happen to be starting from the southern end, the Martin Falls Community Access Road, going up to the Northern Road Link, and finally the Webequie Supply Road. All three projects have a different purpose and intent. For example, the Martin Falls Community Access Road is primarily meant to be a community access road. And regardless of what happens or does not happen in the region economically, the community wants to proceed with the development of the project. The Northern Road Link, explicitly a different purpose, meant to open up the Ring of Fire region for economic development purposes for the two communities, as well as for Northern Ontario and Ontario in general. And the Webequie Supply Road is meant to be an economic development road for the community of Webequie, but it also helps connect Webequie to the provincial highway through the Northern Road Link project. So all have different purposes, but they do come together to sort of connect the overall region. That is absolutely a consequence. But one idea associated with this project, three different projects, whereas it should have been a single project, this idea basically says that there's some benefit of having three different projects. Now, I would suggest that, at the project level, we have no particular benefit from that. We don't think that the process is faster, it's more economic, or any of those benefits. If anything, we're all under a very rigorous voluntary process, might I add, at the provincial level, which is the individual environmental assessment process. It's the most rigorous environmental assessment available in the province of Ontario. Now, on top of that, we've got the federal impact assessment, which is applicable on two of the three projects. And I say two because the way the process is set up, we need to go through the initial steps to know for sure if it is applicable on the Northern Road Link. We assume that it will be applicable. So, we're under very rigorous processes. We don't believe there's any sort of benefits either in terms of schedule or the economy of our development. So there's no real benefit, but the reason why the projects are three different projects is that they have a different purpose, and based on the fact that the communities are Indigenous proponents, it's also a function of when funding became available to the communities to start the processes. So it was partly based on the needs of the communities as well, Don. So hopefully that sort of summarizes what the reasons were. Basically, two clear ones. The first one, that the projects have different purposes; they don't all have the same purpose. And the second one, based on community needs and funding availability to communities, the schedule unfolded the way it did.
Thank you for that, Qasim. I'll now move to Brandon for a question, and this is not a this is a big question. We could talk. You and I could talk about it for hours, Brandon. And but if you can give me sort of the précis version of it. So, what do you do, Brandon, on this project for consultation?
Yeah, great question, Don. I guess to start, the purpose of consultation is really to promote kind of an effective two-way communication between Martin Falls First Nation and Webequie First Nation as proponents with Indigenous communities and stakeholders to both present information as well as receive information, and to identify and address issues and concerns related to the Northern Road Link project. So consultation for this will take place in many different forms, such as tonight's virtual open house, meetings with Indigenous communities or individual stakeholders, live streaming sessions, radio broadcasts that yourself and Chasm have been participating in to date, as well as several virtual forums and online meetings and teleconferences. So really there's a whole robust consultation program going on for this. And the best way to keep informed about it is through the project website, northernroadlink.ca, as well as the various social media channels for the project.
Thanks for that, Brandon. And we're going to get into a deeper discussion, I think, on some of these different engagement methods that we've been deploying over the last, given the challenges of COVID. And we had a really good discussion, I think, last night towards the end of our session with Michael about that. So we'll do that a little bit later on as well too, and talk about some of the things we're doing like this to try to reach out and some of the infrastructure improvements that communities are receiving in order to be able to do this kind of thing more often as well too. And I think Michael's will probably talk a little bit about that as well. So the next frequently asked question that I have on my list here is for Andrea, who's an expert on Indigenous knowledge. And again, this is another open-ended one here, Andrea. So you could go on for hours about this, but here it is. Here's the question: how will Indigenous knowledge inform the environmental assessment?
Well, first, I'd like to say welcome to everybody. And second, I'm by no means an expert. I'm definitely learning from the communities and the Indigenous people that I get to work with. So saying that, our project team understands the importance and value of Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous land and resource use in the assessment process. We see the early stages of project planning as critical, as it will set the foundation for the assessment process and project design. Our goal is to develop a process that is trusted and respected by neighbor and Indigenous communities and meets all regulatory requirements. As we begin with project planning, we will be initiating an Indigenous knowledge program. The IK program will help us work with communities to build an Indigenous knowledge base for the upcoming assessment. IK will be used throughout the entire project, including the design, baseline data collection, prediction of potential effects on Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests, identification of mitigation measures, and the development of fulsome monitoring programs. The IK program provides us with an opportunity to integrate our collective knowledge into the assessment process in a truly meaningful way that will improve and enhance the overall assessment. The information generated through the IK program will be used in concert with scientific approaches, and both knowledge systems will be given equal consideration throughout the assessment process. So what does this look like in practical application? If we were to take fish and fish habitat as an example, both knowledge bodies can help us to better understand fish and fish habitat in the project area, but both from unique and complementary perspectives. Our Western science partners will undertake the baseline assessment using regulatory requirements and industry standards to report on baseline conditions. Our Indigenous partners may utilize your own IK and practices to inform baseline conditions. For example, fishing areas can provide valuable baseline information on location of species, abundance, and health of species. Observational information on water quality and quantity provides valuable information on health. Observational information helps to identify spawning, seasonal use, and migration patterns. And the use of trails and travel routes helps to identify fishing areas and access to them. Collectively, this information forms the baseline conditions, which leads to a more holistic and comprehensive understanding of the natural environment. It is this practice of valuing, respecting, and integrating the two ways of knowing that we will carry throughout all aspects of the assessment process and project design. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Andrea. And that's a really good, thorough sort of explanation. This is and we talked a bit about this last night. This is a rapidly evolving area right now, Indigenous knowledge and the application of Indigenous knowledge and the combination of Indigenous knowledge with Western science. So there's a lot of work. Things are changing in that field quite a bit, and the regulators their expectations of the integration of Indigenous knowledge is much greater than it was before. So let's now move on to our next segment. And in this segment, we're going to talk to our engineering specialist, Dan Kunstler and John Plaisir. And Dan is going to give us sort of a rundown on engineering activities that have been completed to date, engineering related activities that have been completed to date. And Dan, can you just sort of run through what we've been doing so far, just to keep our viewers sort of up to date on what's going on that end of things?
For sure. Thanks. We've begun looking at the past studies and reports that have been compiled over the last decade and beyond, and which has provided a really good lens for background information in terms of terrain, ground, feedback from communities, and to that end, it's really helped us guide us in terms of our approach. The second element, of course, has been the LiDAR capture, so light detection radar, and that's a survey tool to help us get really good information on the ground surface, the terrain that we're going to be up against, imagery as well, and it helps inform areas of corridors that we're looking at, and that speaks to the maps that you shared earlier in the presentation. The setting out of the GDC, the geometric design criteria, you spoke earlier or questioned earlier about the design of the road, and we appreciate that it's going to be roughly the 11.5 meter wide road, design speed of 100, posted at 80, and those are elements that we already are factoring in our approach and the terrain types that we're looking to build the road on. And again, referring back to Andrea's comments, we're looking forward to the information that's garnered through both Western science and through community feedback and Indigenous knowledge that's gained to help make sure that we're designing and building the road, not just where it makes engineering sense. Often that's the straightforward approach, but we often have to pivot for obvious and very important reasons.
Thanks for that, Dan. And my next question for you is based on the fact that this segments of this road will be going through the James Bay lowlands, which is a challenging terrain to say the least. And so the question is what kind of considerations will there be with respect to building the road through the James Bay lowlands, through the muskeg? Can you tell us a bit about that? Because it's quite a challenge, isn't it, Dan?
For sure, Don. And first and foremost, we try and avoid those areas, but without hesitation, we know that we're going to be encountering those and having to navigate through those. And through experience by both science and construction experience in past, we've learned a lot. And there's different approaches navigating through fens, bogs, and swamps. And one of those is to chase shallow organics and replace with your embankment material. However, this we've found that this does disturb the groundwater, and that's one of the main elements that we're trying to achieve, that equilibrium balance on both sides. And so instead, a more common approach is to raft, to bridge over top of the organic peat bog layer. And by doing that, we maintain the equilibrium of the groundwater underneath. And that's evidenced actually in terms of some science gained on past projects where we installed instrumentation, where we term piezometers on both sides of the road embankment. And over the course of seasons and data gathered, have been able to convey and illustrate that the water is in equilibrium. And we were cognizant as well that the peat bog fen areas typically consolidate 40%, as in they settle 40% after the embankment is placed. And so we factor this in. And in areas where we have shallow peat areas and they could be compromised, we will augment or supplement this with culverts to maintain the drainage factor and element. And of course, we're using geotextiles and geogrids today to help us strengthen, to reduce the amount of material and resources and aggregates that are needed compared to conventional in past decades where we didn't have these elements to build with. So that's another element that we consider.
Thanks for that, Dan. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the geotechnical engineering side of things. Our geotechnical engineering lead wasn't able to join us tonight, so I'll explain a little bit about some of the field work that's coming up in April, hopefully in April, with regard to that. And so the plan is to do geotechnical drilling and monitoring well installation during April, and that would be the purpose of that would be to confirm and or refine the location of the corridor, as well as support other environmental studies. So understanding the subsurface, the soil, the different soil types, and the layering and the extent of each layer and the properties of the different soil types. It sort of all feeds into helping to decide exactly where the road should go. This field work would occur over a period of 2 weeks, and there would be a number of locations where the drilling would occur. There would be 1 to 2 boreholes uh, drilled at the different locations. With the plan right now is to drill 18 boreholes in total, up to a depth of 15 meters. There would be wells installed at select locations, and these wells would be, as you talked about earlier, these would be monitored through installation of piezometers for groundwater levels. There are also very likely, I believe, to be groundwater samples taken for quality analysis as well. Soil and bedrock samples will be collected and tested as well. So there's a lot of geotechnical work coming up in April, assuming it goes ahead in April, and so that's what's happening on that side of things. So let's move now to the biology side of things. We have John Plaisir with us, the project ecologist, and John is going to run through the wide range of biology field activities planned for 22. John, it's quite a bit of to do, isn't it, in 2022, to say the least?
Good evening, Don. Don, thanks for having me on. Yes, it's shaping up to be another busy year in 2022 with regards to ecological surveys for the NRL project. Um, we we have a whole bunch of things on the go. We have stream assessments and water sampling, as well as fisheries studies to determine the species composition and waterways of the project. I myself am more of a terrestrial ecologist. We have botanists that are going to be out in the field doing hundreds of sample plots all across all the different sections, alternative sections of the roadway, in order to get a complete species inventory of the area, as well as define the plant communities across the study area. Of course, the plant communities go a great way in determining what animals occur in the area as well. We have lots of different studies that we started in 2021 for wildlife and birds that'll continue into 2022, and these include acoustic studies of bats. There's a number of bat species that occur as far north as this project is, including a couple of endangered species. So we're going to have these acoustic recorders that will record the echolocation of these species, and we'll be able to use that to determine where they're occurring and in what relative numbers. We have quite a few bird surveys that we'll be conducting in 2022. We'll have biologists on the ground doing listen-in surveys for birds, as well as doing aerial surveys for migrating waterfowl and migrating shorebirds, as well as raptors like eagles, hawks, and owls, and where their nests might be. And we also have acoustics studies that will be underway for birds and other species like frogs, and even mammals like wolves can be picked up with the recorders that we use for birds. And using these different acoustic survey types would be very helpful for our wildlife survey program, because this road study, this road project is up in very inaccessible locations, and a lot of animals are active in the wee hours of the morning and the late hours at night. So having all these acoustic detectors installed out there will help us get 24-hour data of the soundscape of the environment, and help us do a much more comprehensive assessment of what animals out there and where they are and where they're active.
Thank you, John. And oh, sorry, John. Did you have more to say there?
Oh, and I got carried away with the acoustic stuff. But this winter, we also will be doing some aerial surveys in the area as well. This will help us record winter tracks for fur bearers like wolves and martens, and we'll also gain some insight into the status of wolverine in the area, and moose and caribou as well.
Thank you, John. One thing we should also mention, John, is that with all this field work we have planned, this biology field work, we would very much like to have community members help us with this field work. There's a lot of opportunities for community members to join our teams and work with us through the spring, summer, through the rest of the project, basically, on these field studies. They're really interesting field studies. We've done this successfully on other projects, and so we're reaching out officially now to everyone to see if any community members are interested in helping out with these many field programs. So thank you for that, John. And I think it's break time now. So we've got we got a couple of videos we want to show you, and one of the videos we want to show you is the first one is our visit to Martin Falls by the part of the project team. We did a video of that, and I think you'll find it interesting. And then after that, we're going to share a video that was done a couple of years ago in the community and in Webequie First Nation. And basically it talks about some of the aspirations of the younger community members or even older community members to have an outdoor rink, but with some shelter that will protect the community members from the wind. So we are going to play those two videos back to back. Then we're going to come back, and it looks like we have a question that we're going to take after the videos. So we will join you very shortly. I think maybe 10 to 15 minutes we'll be back, but please watch this video, and then we'll continue our conversation. Do we have the videos ready, project team? I think we do, yes. Let's watch those videos, and we'll come back in a few minutes.
They're at the 11-minute mark in the third period.
Maple Leafs Basic, Red Wings, Kamashjbiniga.
Face-off will be in the leaf zone at this end.
Red Wings,
You can hear them. Rosso, Wares, Abel.
Maple Leafs.
And the Don Met and John Met. They're at back of their own net.
Abel Function. Stewart.
For me, like my son will be in high school next year, and well, me and my husband were talking about it still, like it might be best for him to go to high school in Thunder Bay or anywhere instead of here because we don't have an arena and he wants to skate.
Actually, the old community of Webequie used to be a gathering place where all of the different families, while they were out during the winter, came back to the community, which was traditionally known as Kijibanika, which means at the end of the lake. And this is where our community members used to gather.
Like I had to wear long johns, I had to wear a sweater, a hoodie on top, and put all my gear. Sometimes it wasn't that comfortable, but at least I played hockey. So.
I try usually keeping this rink good every day. Usually come out and shovel, trying to do the edges. Yeah.
Is it hard to do conditioner around here?
Yeah, it's usually very cold and windy.
Yeah?
And snowy.
So you have to go out of town to condition, or?
Yeah, I just was gonna try and leave to an arena, but I can't get enough money.
Webequie is located roughly 527 kilometers away from Thunder Bay and is constantly told about the billions of dollars of value in their ring of fire.
We need an arena. Guys, look at it. Look at this whole place. It's filled with snow.
A market where people can sell their vegetables jogging, maybe track and field if possible, they can do that. Having a place where we can have either summer festivals or even winter carnivals, powwows, as well as hosting tournaments or even hosting regional conferences.
In particular this year, we're having issues with the weather, and also during the summer we don't have any place to go to, like when it's raining or anything like that. And it certainly would help to have an indoor sessions with the kids. You know, we need to be have them more active. Being active, you know, gives them less likely to get into trouble or get into other mischiefs, that type. And we're plagued with mischiefs nowadays.
I mean, like, it's really cold during the winters, and it would be good for kids. Less flus going around. a place to hang out most of the time instead of causing trouble.
Since I've been here for 1965.
It's been a long time I've been here. And I have been working in the education department for over 20 years now. And it's been over 30 years we've been trying to get the indoor rink.
Plus, most of these young boys we have here, they dream of going on the NHL. But with the rink we have here, it's impossible to do so.
If you could get everything you wanted, what would you want?
A Zamboni and seats in the stands. That's all. And dressing rooms.
If we can get this building here, like, it would really have a major impact on these youth, especially the youth. And also maybe they can try something else like curling in there. And say for the summertime they would play floor hockey there, play volleyball, or they can use that space for like dryland training and jogging around.
And I lost my oldest a couple years ago, but he was really into hockey. When he started skating when he was 3 years old, 4 years old, it didn't matter if it was blowing snow, -40, 30, for him to go skating. I know he had a couple of frostbites too.
Ekwa Donmet, where the Panigot the Trevohan, Panigot Neke Able function. Ekwa Manaka Panigot Mina and give it you, Stewart. Ekwa Panigot give it Nigga.
That's the stuff you do in order for you to play hockey. Like, there's a bunch of us in same age as me. A bunch of us there, traveling out on the winter roads just to go play indoors.
I want an arena!
Yeah, we used to travel out to the nearby communities by Skidoos.
Oh yeah, to go play?
Yeah. Closest one would probably be Summer Beaver.
Okay.
So we would drive out. A couple of buddies of mine, maybe like 5 Skidoos. We get people to hop on the sleds.
Skate! So we could skate! So we could skate all day. So it won't be windy. And so we won't be cold.
What do you think about skating? Is it hard on your lungs to skate here? Tell me about what it's like to be skating -20.
It's hard to explain, but all I can say is it feels great.
And I'd like to see it being built in Webekwe as quickly as possible, because the arena can be used during the winter time and also during the summertime.
You want an arena?
Yeah, it's cold out here. Because it's cold out here.
We lose a lot of young people too. On suicides, we have lost a lot of youths from the past. That's the reason I'm saying, and probably it's been said out already what I'm talking about. All I'm saying is nobody shouldn't be left out whatsoever.
again. Hi, Sunny. What do you want to be when you grow up?
A police officer.
Police officer.
I'd like to kind of go ahead and do his presentation. Welcome everybody coming in today, being part of the meeting.
A teacher?
Again, a lot of work has already gone into that, including a lot of feedback from our own Lawrence Baxter and others providing input on guiding that.
So as Kazim indicated, I'm gonna talk about the Martin Falls Access Road project and provide an update on the environmental assessment in terms of where we're at, and
We consider bringing fire to our ancestral area, so we don't. We hope that we can resolve things with our First Nations.
See you tomorrow, Chief. Take care. Thank you so much.
Working with government and industry and other First Nations, we find a way to work on those issues that we have or that they may have.
Okay, we're back. I hope you enjoyed those two videos, community videos. We did receive a couple of questions over the last few minutes, and the first one is with regard to building in the through the Muskeg, through the James Bay lowlands, and the question is. It is not, well, it's a comment and a question. It's not just a technical challenge. It has the potential to release carbon from the peatlands, right? How are the climate impacts of ecosystem fragmentation going to be taken account of? So, Dan, I thought we could discuss this a little bit, and you touched on the methods used and the methods that would reduce the amount of peat that would have to be excavated as part of building a road through these areas. Can you maybe sort of expand on that and talk about the role of the geotext or the geogrid or geotextile, depending on the area that you're working in, and how that sort of and the idea of rafting and how that limits the amount of peat that has to be excavated?
Yeah, for sure. So again, just coming back to the intent is to minimize as to the greatest extent possible excavation of the peat and bog, and essentially rafting over that with the geotextiles and geogrids. Using these types of materials will decrease the amount of material that is needed to build the subgrade, the bottom portion of the road embankment, if you will, and therefore requiring less excavation of quarries and borrow sites. We're also cognizant of again that movement of water beneath and wanting to ensure that that is not inhibited, and where we have those shallow depths of peat bog, making sure that we are putting in equalizer culverts, if you will, to maintain that water flow. Now again, we're trying to minimize how often we go in these areas. We're definitely chasing higher ground and glacial tills and good road building areas where less embankment is needed, because again, these areas do consolidate. But maybe I'll turn it over to others on the science side in terms of quantifying some of these carbon matters and discussion I think I heard in the question there.
I don't know if we have anyone from the climate side on the call today. I don't think we do. But we can definitely respond in more detail after the presentation for sure. We actually have another question here, and I'm going to put this out to the group. The question is, why did Webequie decide to follow Ontario's EA process to examine the pros and cons of the road? Communities conducting Indigenous-led EAs often choose to follow their own Indigenous laws instead. Who would like to tackle that one?
Well, Don, I can start with a little bit of a background response on the process that the communities went through in their decision to become proponents of this environmental assessment. So first of all, thank you for that question in terms of what the communities are doing and why they're doing it. So the first piece there, the direction that Michael and I have from the communities in terms of the environmental assessment process is based on the spirit of the treaties, and I think there's a recognition of that at the community level, and that is that sharing is a two-way road from the perspective of the First Nations, which includes undertaking processes that are already established from a regulatory perspective. Now, having said that, the question also assumes that the communities are not following their own Indigenous laws as well as processes that are established and codified at the community level. They very much are. Now, we receive our direction directly from the community. There's a community based process in which community members get together to talk about the overall assessments that are being created. That direction from Chief and Council goes to the working group, which is composed of 2 members from Webequie and 2 members from Martin Falls. And they ensure that that entire process is rolls through Michael and myself towards the entire consulting team. So that's the process we've established to ensure that community direction is at the heart of the assessment. So just I wanted to clarify that in that question was an assumption that we don't, whereas we very much do. The process is entirely built around the priorities, the needs, and the perspectives of the two communities at the forefront. We're also very cognizant of the fact that we have other regulatory responsibilities, and the lens behind this project is really the lens of economic responsibility and economic reconciliation. Reconciliation from an economic perspective demands that the economic gap between Martin Falls, Webequie, and the rest of Canada, it starts to close. This project is a step in that direction. And we're trying to undertake that responsibility not only from the perspective of the communities, but this responsibility, I think, enables economic development more broadly across Ontario and Canada. So I just wanted to clarify that, Don, that I think we're doing both with this project. And the communities do take their regulatory responsibility seriously. Lastly, I wanted to add one comment, which is in terms of their own Indigenous environmental assessments that they follow right now, those processes are being strengthened and further codified. So we will see more of that in future developments more publicly. Right now, these are projects led by the communities, and those processes are not public facing. I think in the future, as other environmental assessments begin in the Ring of Fire region, we will see those become more public facing. So more to come on that, Don, as other projects come online, I think.
Thank you for that, Qasim. And I will mention we did receive another, more of a comment, I guess, than a question, and it was a treaty related question, and we can't really directly respond to it. It's a historically complex question, and we don't really have a treaty experts on with us right now. So it's something we can't really respond to during the course of this session. But please, again, don't hesitate to contact us. Call us or text us at 1-844-424-0500. That's 1-844-424-0500. Now, the next segment we're going to move on to is to discuss some of our Indigenous participation initiatives. We have a firm that's working with us on this project called Origin, and they have a sort of a unique approach to trying to engage community members and get them interested in potential roles either during the environmental assessment or during construction or post-construction, different project roles. So they have a unique sort of way of trying to capture the interest of community members. And Charmaine unfortunately wasn't able to join us tonight, Charmaine McCraw from Origin, but she was nice enough to leave us a video, which is great. And if our team has that available, we will play that video. They do. We will play that video and then we'll come back and continue our conversation.
Bonjour, good evening. My name is Charmaine McCraw and I work with Origin. We've been working with SNC and the NRL project to help encourage employment connections. So what we've been doing is identifying typical careers that community members might get involved in on the project, and then we've been creating virtual experiences so that from anywhere, community members can see what it's like to actually be in that job. We all know that when we look at a job posting and there's all these requirements and all of these words that we might not quite understand, we don't really know what those jobs are. So using Immersive Link, we are featuring and profiling those jobs. So you know what the environments are like, you know what your job looks like day to day, and you really get to understand how you might have an impact on the Northern Road Link project. I'm just going to play a quick clip from Melissa Hardy-Giles, who's the owner of Origin. Just to explain the Immersive Link system a little bit further, and then I'll be back.
Hi, my name is Melissa Hardy-Giles and I was born and raised on Lake Callan Reserve. I'm here to tell you about Immersive Link, our experiential learning tool created here by our team at Origin. We partner with industry to create virtual worksite tours which allow the users to experience occupations for themselves. This young man is Lauren, who we were able to connect to a career in mining. These experiences are added to the library in our Immersive Link app, which instantly updates to all headset subscribers. Our system can be found in schools, employment and training organizations, trade unions, as well as many First Nation communities. Immersive Link engages, motivates, and connects people to careers like never before. Miigwech for having me share our system with you. We'd be happy to have a conversation to see how we can work together.
So we've developed 3 experiences so far with SNC, one being a wildlife biologist, a wildlife technician, and we've also done environmental monitor. And these are all positions that community members have an opportunity to take part in on the NRL project. So we're also working on a community liaison one and what that job means and how you might be able to see yourself in that position. So we go out into an environment, we speak to an expert in that career field, we identify points of interest about the job and the daily activities. We capture those environments, just whether they be in an office or whether they be outdoor, and then we create a VR experience. So with that VR experience, what we plan to do is work with both Martin Falls and Webakwe to work with their employment people or a resource person in their community to distribute headsets. And then what they would do is then be able to use this as a tool to be able to explain the different jobs to the community members. So we are always looking for people that are interested in doing this. So you can contact me, Charmaine at immersivelink.ca, and we would look forward to doing a virtual workshop where I would send the headsets up to your community, or if it's open and as the COVID restrictions start to lift, perhaps maybe I can even come visit in person. So we're all about building capacity in communities, and this really gives the ability for people to kind of determine whether or not they see themselves in that role and then kind of increase that retention piece. So becoming an environmental monitor just on the NRL project doesn't mean that's it. There's plenty of resource development in the north period and well across Canada. So there's opportunity after the project as well to continue on in those career positions. So about a month ago, we visited the community of Martin Falls with the project team, and it was really inspiring to see the amount of people that were interested in the headsets, especially the youth, and that is ultimately who we want to inspire to get connected to career. I had a number of people try it. I think there was about 40 or 50-ish people at the event, and I think I have a list of names of about 25. So right now, the SNC experiences weren't completed yet. So the people that did try the headsets had an opportunity to look through our library, and we have about right now 35 different career experiences. So, that's another really cool thing about this tool and how it's used is that, when we are in our northern communities, like I grew up in a community of 400 people, there was not a whole lot of jobs. You've seen, the heavy equipment operators, you've seen moms, you've seen teachers, you've seen police officers, but you don't really sometimes have an understanding of what all the opportunities are out there and what you might aspire to build your education and training and eventually career to. So Immersive Link is really cool for that, and we plan on doing more with SNC so that, now is the time to really start getting prepared for employment. As we know, we are in the tour phase, so the terms of reference phase, and this is like the work plan. So once we get to the EA, we want to have people that are already prepared, that are already trained, or that where we can build mentorships right into the project. So as they are doing the environmental work, there are people working side by side. Like I was saying earlier, at Origin, one of the things we believe in strongly is giving back to the communities and giving back to our knowledge keepers and our youth, and really kind of ensuring that there's good things happening. In the last couple of years, our company has worked together with communities of Webequie and Martin Falls and Casablanca Lake, actually, to build playgrounds in their communities. So I'd just like to share a short clip of some of the some of the action shots from those projects. We've had to shift a little bit, and that's now we're focusing on Indigenous perspectives. So it's about teaching youth about VR and how to use it in their communities to tell their stories. One last thing. Throughout the last couple of years, I've connected over, 89 or almost 90 people to employment. and going through the communities and all the smiling faces once they got that first paycheck is something very special. But I just wanted to include one last clip I'll leave you with, and it's why we do what we do here at Origin. So miigwech.
Include me.
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 Include me. Include me.
Include me.
Okay, our thanks to Charmaine for putting that together for us in her absence. Um, I just want to make a couple of points about the Indigenous Participation Initiative. The first is that, as Charmaine sort of touched on, as communities open up with the COVID restrictions starting to be removed, we'll be able to get into communities and get into Martin Falls and get into Webequie and really start putting this program on the ground, so to speak. So we're in the process of identifying more project related jobs to profile, and we'll keep doing that, and so that we profile jobs that occur at different phases of the project, whether it's the environmental assessment phase or construction or operations as well. So our next segment is with Brandon, and we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into something I was talking about before, which was the draft tour comments. I know Brandon has been wading through many comments, responding to many comments, so he's been exposed to a lot of them, and he's made some observations. So I thought he thought that it would be a good idea to share these observations, and then our group as a whole can maybe discuss some of these. I'll hand it over to you, Brandon.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Yeah, so as Don said, we want to dive in a bit as a group tonight. And what I've done is I've prepared kind of some key themes of comments and things that we received throughout the draft tour process. And we'll just talk a little bit about it as a group. So the one area I want to start on, and maybe this is up Mike's alley. So we received a number of comments related to a variety of consultation and engagement methods, and specifically thinking around the restrictions associated with COVID-19, how we're going to engage communities, or what we as a project team are doing to bring innovative engagement techniques and consultation techniques to the group. And Mike, I know your group has been quite heavily involved in the production side of consultation efforts to date. I was hoping you could maybe talk a little bit about some of the things we've been doing.
Sure, Brandon. I appreciate that. Like probably most projects out there in the same region, whether that's the Watay Power or other fiber optics that require some kind of engagement, we all kind of had to find innovative ways to engage with all the people that wanted information but couldn't, because the communities were on shutdown, or the province was on shutdown. And so we, prior to all that, we were full force and full time flying into communities and doing chief and council meetings and community information meetings. So so we have a range, that's open today. So when we communicate with leadership, we explain that there's a variety of methods by which engagement can happen, and that could be a smaller group session with just the council or the staff or their technicians to discuss the topic at hand. We can have community sessions with COVID protocols being followed in a secured place. We've done that as well with barriers between the presenters and the audience. Drop-in centers where we sort of got an information booth where people can, in a safe location where they can stop by and learn about the project. Or you can go virtually. So there's like sort of virtual focus groups. So having 4 or 6 people online, whether again council members or the staff or community members or technicians that are using to discuss the project or the process. It's the exact same platforms that they're using now, whether Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google Meets or GoToMeetings, Skype, WebEx, all the other video conferencing platforms that the Indigenous leaders and staff are currently using to meet with government officials or health agencies, their lawyers or advisors, board meetings, tribal council meetings, chiefs assemblies, and any other online conferences. So we're using the same tools they're using to have virtual focus groups. But we can do actually virtual community presentations. So using the range of video conferencing platforms I just mentioned, and setting it up with in the community hall, and using just a projector and a laptop and a PA system, because we've done all this during COVID, and then just going through the presentation virtually in a community information live session in their own community. And I know Don and I have done this, and they would come up to the laptop and ask questions about the presentations, uh, and we would answer them just live because of the speakers that were set up with the PA system. So that's a virtual community information sessions we've presented already. Or you can just go down almost like old school methods. We would use a phone and a fax. We will fax the presentation and set up a teleconference or teleconference number and go through the presentations based on the area of interest the community wants to focus on. Um, when local radio call-in shows, I mean, there's a lot of communities that have local radios. They're set up where a person can phone in. I know we've done this, to phone in into a community and go through with a local translator if need be, and we tend to pay for that as well to explain, the presentation over the radio. And then the ability for local members to phone in at that local radio station and ask questions on that. And there's other typical ways of online surveys. We can go through that. So, with we've done Wawate radio shows, creating awareness among the Indigenous membership and leadership about the project. Ever since we started doing that, as well as the social media micro targeting these communities with the feed. There were Facebook feeds and other social media platforms. They've been clicking away. That leads them to either the landing page of the project website or the website itself, or the video, or the video streaming that we're doing. So we track all that to demonstrate that both the radio awareness campaign as well as the social media strategy actually works. We can actually tell you where they're looking on the web page, what they're reading, what they're downloading, what they're viewing, um, and just based even on the bytes, the terabytes that are being used on that website. I think that the latest thing that we've done is the VR open house. So I welcome, I invite the listening audience to go to our VR open house and go through the storyboards that would have been um, set up in an actual open house setting, and it's the same storyboards that you can view virtually with an introduction with some instructions by Marion, who will guide you through, and then you can just go to each of the storyboards, and there's a comment box for each of the storyboards. So as one goes through and reads, they can send their comments in. So it's a variety of ways we've been doing there, Brandon.
Mike, if I can just jump in for a minute too, and just add to what you said, the you and I have both observed that what the few times those windows where we were able to actually visit communities. We were up in Webequie in late October through November, I think, on a number of occasions, and when we went there, one thing that we observed was, after having done a number of these streaming sessions and Wabate radio shows, there seems to be a couple of things. There's community members are asking really good questions about the process, really informed questions. So I think it's raised to sort of the base level of understanding of the impact assessment and environmental assessment process. I think one observation I have made is that there's now a greater appreciation for the comprehensiveness of this process. Not only just a better understanding, but understanding that there are many studies involved in this and that it takes a long time for a reason, because there are studies done in many different disciplines, and many of these studies occur um, over years, and not just seasons, but over years as well. So there's quite an appreciation now for the process, in that it's not just this rubber stamping process at all. There's a much more to it, and that we are looking out for what is important to community members and the general public. We're looking out for a lot of aspects of the natural environment, the social environment, etc. So there's there's a lot there, and just to add to what Mike was saying, for the NRL project, we do bi-weekly radio shows and streaming sessions. Qasim and I do a 1 hour radio show on Wabate Radio Network, which is a regional radio network, and we have a different topic every couple of weeks, and we mix in some music just to keep things interesting, and we have a really interesting conversation about the different topics, and then we do a half-hour streaming session later the same day as well. So anyway, I just thought I'd add that to what Mike was saying, Brandon.
Awesome, thanks, Don. Is that easy listening music that you add in there, or?
Oh, I don't know. It depends on what your taste is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It follows a theme every week. Would you call it easy listening, Qasim?
Well, I don't know if that's the best descriptive word there, Brandon, but I enjoy it. Don's usually, not usually, he's always kind enough to check with me if I'm okay with that. And I always, so far, I usually look at the list and go, oh, this looks like a fun hour to me. So.
Awesome. Yeah. So another one of the key themes that we noticed in a lot of the draft tour comments that were coming in was there seems to be a number of questions related to the tour process versus the EA process, and how those two differ, and where they may overlap. And I know we talked a little bit about this last night, and Chasm, I think you had a great response or perspective on it, and I was hoping we could pick up that question again and go with it a little bit, just to discuss the difference between the tour and the EA, and how those processes overlap for us.
Yeah, Brandon, I can pick up on that. So one of the questions, and I think comments we've received is the difference between the tour and the EA, and for some people, they assume that the tour is the EA, and colloquially we all call this entire process an environmental assessment. But it's got different labels at different stages at this point. The terms of reference process that we're in for the provincial environmental assessment process, that's effectively just a roadmap, or a work plan for what we intend to do. And once that's approved, either approved or approved with changes, or it can also be rejected, and then we sort of go back to the drawing board. But let's assume it's approved. Then we get to implement it. And that implementation phase really is the environmental assessment. That's where the assessment, the actual work of assessment begins. In the tour process, there's no assessment work.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Chasm. And I think the other comments. So for those of you who who tuned in last night, we kind of left it off with a bit of a preamble into tonight for our last kind of dive in topic was going to be about economic opportunities or job opportunities that may be coming as part of the EA or as part of the project. So I was hoping we could chat a little bit as a group around kind of some of the opportunities available to communities in and around the project location, or for people in high school who might be looking for their next steps into where to engage their education and training. I know Charmaine in the videos that she presented talked quite a bit about some of the opportunities that they've presented so far, but could the group discuss maybe some other opportunities that may be available to individuals or economic opportunities that may be coming as part of the project?
Well, I'll start things off by talking a bit about how each EA, upon its approval, if it is approved, has a monitoring component to it and a commitment component to it, and this one will as well. And at that point, there is quite often participation, when Indigenous communities are involved, and certainly when they're proponents, there's participation by community members in those programs. So I can see that being a very good sort of benefit to communities post project. John, maybe I'll call on you there to jump in a little bit too. I mean, you would probably see. I mean, there will very likely be quite an extensive monitoring program if this project is approved. Wouldn't you say so, John?
Absolutely, Don. There'll be a large monitoring component, and even now, just with the baseline surveys that we've started on the project, we are welcome to having community members or students that are in university, if they're in the environmental sciences field or anything related to that, to have them come out and work alongside us. We've done this on other projects in the past, notably the Waiwakoi Supply Road, where we've had members of the community come out, and in some cases they've had their own interests or personal skills. We've had trappers come out on caribou surveys with us, and come out and do fish surveys or tag along for bird surveys. And we've been able to benefit from the local knowledge or the local specialization that that individual has, being on the ground with us, sharing their knowledge of the area, and in turn we're able to pass along some of the Western science methodologies that we use for our assessments as well. We have lots of surveys that are underway. Extra pairs of helping hands are always welcome with a lot of those surveys, and we've gone into this project with the anticipation that we would be able to have community members or other individuals that aspire to a career in the natural sciences come out and help us. I know that some of the work that we have underway currently, we really wish that we could have more involvement, and unfortunately, COVID-19 has prevented participation in a lot of these programs. But we're eager to have extra hands. So if you know somebody that is pursuing a career in the environmental sciences, or someone that has an interest in the outdoors, or has knowledge of that would be of help to us, we're certainly interested in learning about these individuals and seeing if and where we can get them involved in our work.
And John, I know you sent me an idea you had yesterday about a summer student program, which I thought was a fantastic idea. And so we're just, we really want to put something forward like that. Maybe something formal that we can really push maybe through social media to try and encourage that participation, because it's mutual benefit, as John said. I mean, it's really enriched, I think, a lot of the experiences of our field team to have community members with them in terms of raising their level of knowledge as well too, and learning from each other. So I think there's a lot of mutual benefit there, for sure. Anyone else want to chip in? Oh,
Sure,
we have
Don.
Andrea.
I'll just jump in. So going from the environmental science to the social science, and bringing it kind of indoors too, I think there's lots of opportunities around the community liaison position, helping, kind of two-way, us understanding best ways to engage and work with communities, organizing community workshops, helping with data collection within the community, building those skills around, note taking, facilitation. They're all types of skills, from meeting organization, running workshops, translation. These are all skills that can be developed and used in other project areas as well. And they're skills that are easily transferable. So I see the community liaison positions being really, really valuable, both for communities and also for the project team.
It's so true, Andrea. I mean, that community liaison, those community liaison positions are really key. Community members are obviously and understandably more comfortable speaking to their own fellow community members, and having them involved in the organization and the execution of focus group discussions, I think is really, really valuable. So it may not be quite as exciting visually as being out in the field, jumping out of the helicopter and doing a lot of the stuff that John does, but it's really, really key, I think,
I
to,
disagree, Don.
of course, office people, yes. Um, Anyone else want to contribute to that? No? Uh, so, Brandon, I think you've covered off your three key observations from the draft tour comments. I think, have you?
Yeah, those were kind of the three overarching themes that we picked up on. I think we'll hand it back to you for the evening.
Okay, I just we one FAQ we did not address that I just remembered was about the ownership of the road. Who will own and maintain the road? And I think it's one that we should address, to the degree that we can address it, I suppose. And I think Qasim was our was the one, I think, that answered it last night. Would you mind taking another run at that one for us, Qasim?
Sure, Don. I can take another stab at it, I guess. We've described this in the draft door as well, but the proponents at this stage for the project in the environmental assessment process are the communities of Martin Falls and Webekwe First Nation. Now, that means that that's where their role currently is intended to end. There's a process of dialogue between different stakeholders, as well as within Martin Falls and Webekwe, which is dependent on the outcome of the environmental assessment process. So, as communities, they need to make their own decision once the environmental assessment comes to an end. But there will be several options available at that point. We don't have an answer to that question at this stage. If the communities will be the proponents of the construction phase, they might be. They might do that in partnership, or they might hand it off to a third entity, depending on what the communities decide at that point. And it's a similar answer for maintenance as well. We don't really know at this stage which entity will continue to maintain the projects. It could be that the nations decide that they're not going to be responsible for construction, but they want to be responsible for maintenance in the future. So there are a number of different combinations and outcomes possible. And as that becomes clear over time, I think we'll continue to update members of the public, absolutely our neighboring communities around the project as well. So I would say, Don, stay tuned. We don't have an answer today definitively, but I'm sure as time goes on, an answer will emerge, and we'll continue to update everyone on that.
Thanks for that, Qasim. And we've sort of reached the wrap up or final thoughts phase of the evening. And Michael, if I just thought maybe you could
Sure.
just share this one with Qasim. We'll get your final thoughts, and as is our tradition, we'll finalize the final thoughts with Qasim. So, Mike, maybe you can start first.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I'm sorry, I was just switching from YouTube to Facebook. So I see some of the questions on YouTube. I think Dana Scott was asking why Webequay decided to follow Ontario's EA process to examine the pros and cons of the road, etc. Where she says that communities conducting Indigenous-led EAs often choose to follow their own Indigenous laws instead. Well, EAs are mainstream laws, for one, and there are very few Indigenous-led EAs in the country, never mind Ontario. And Webequay, has their own sort of aspirations and their own set of views and worldviews and values and set of principles that they call the three tier model. And it's a set of principles that they are operating on based on the sort of the transmission of the knowledge keepers and elders to the next generation. So we're following a set of principles that are Indigenous, that are in this Indigenous 98, as well as Martin Falls is following, it's put forth there. And so there's this harmonized process when it comes to Indigenous-led EA that informs, I guess, the provincial and the federal process going forward. One of the primary purpose why Webequay is getting involved in Indigenous-led EA, which are very few in the country, is that they care about the land. It's not just a principle of self-determination, or inherent right to self-government to choose their own aspirations, but they have their own set of priorities, as Qasim said earlier, their own set of aspirations, their own sustainability models, and environmental stewardship. And what better way, to make sure your land, your homelands are protected, and then leading as an Indigenous community the EA process. So that's something intrinsic. And the other question is from Joseph Duncan. How does this development going to affect the traditional culture and way of life of the Indigenous members in that particular region in the Nan Territory? First of all, the Nan Territory is huge. There's been mines in the Nan Territory, lots of mines, lots of development, lots of hydro all around. And so each set of communities or cluster communities that are involved in development projects, they find sort of that that middle ground between natural resource development and natural resource protection, following their own principles, whether that's the Wate power transmission lines that's up there, or the Mushkegowuk community's all season road feasibility study that they're considering, or whether it's the hydro site of OPG, that other Nan communities involved, like they find their own way going forward, and balanced way, that that can enhance even traditional cultural way of life as well. I mean, you look at the Quebec Crees, they have had a road for a while, and you go up there, they speak Cree. They still hunt. They still trap. They still have um, trap lines, active trap lines, and harvesting going on. You look at northern Manitoba with all their developments that they've had, whether that's the roads up there, the mines, the nickel mines, or the big hydro sites, they still speak Cree. They still, that doesn't mean they don't have problems. Whether you have development or no development, you're going to have problems, sometimes social problems and other problems that are associated in these remote communities. So I do appreciate these questions. I really love these type of questions. So I thank Dana Scott and Duncan, Joseph Duncan, and others. We're here to have these type of dialogues. I'm not afraid of them. I actually I like them because when during COVID we had a drastic reduction in such dialogues, and when we were going face to face, these type of questions always emerge. So thanks, Don.
Thank you, Mike. And now let's move to Qasim for the final thoughts, Qasim.
Don, I appreciate that opportunity. I promise these will be the final ones. And with that, I think I want to leave. I want to leave our audience with three main thoughts. Really, the first one, building on exactly what Michael said just now. First of all, thank you so much for being here this evening and sharing your evening with us. We absolutely really appreciate this opportunity to have this dialogue. We're available by all conventional and non-conventional and innovative means. Restrictions are hopefully in the next few weeks coming to an end. We're available to meet in person, organize a meeting, have a discussion online or by phone. I think we've made that very clear that we're very flexible and completely available to have any opportunity to discuss any matter related with this project with you. Second, these are very early days in the project. I talked about the difference between the tour and the environmental assessment. We're still in the phase where we're writing up the work plan, the work we want to do in the environmental assessment process. There will be many opportunities to participate. So again, I just want to encourage everyone to please keep an eye on those opportunities. If you miss them and you have any questions, please reach out to us. There's always an opportunity to have a direct dialogue. And then lastly, I think with Dan as one of our engineering leads, he spoke at length about the science and innovation and technology that is available for this project. However, your participation really helps enhance the project. So my last thought really is that please get in touch, and if you have any ideas, thoughts about the project, please share them with us. It means a lot to Martin Falls and to Webquay, and we certainly absolutely appreciate your participation this evening. So thank you so much, Don, for this opportunity to have the last word.
Thank you, Qasim. And thank you to all of our experts who joined us over the last two nights. We really appreciate you taking the time, and most especially to our viewers who contributed quite a bit to the sessions over the last two nights, as Mike talked about, with some really interesting and challenging questions, which is the point of this exercise, really. So that concludes tonight's live presentation and Q&A event. And as Qasim indicated, we encourage you to continue to engage with us, to visit our website at northernroadlink.ca and connect with us via social media at NRL Roadlink. We are available in a lot of different ways. Please do not be shy. Please do not hesitate to contact us, and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as we can. So thanks again to everyone, and we will see you very soon. Take care. Miigwech.